So, a Georgia man who poured boiling hot water on a sleeping gay couple will not be charged with a hate crime. Now, Anthony Gooden and Marquez Tolbert were sleeping in Gooden's apartment on February 12th when Martin Blackwell, the boyfriend of Gooden's mother, walked in. Now, according to Tolbert, Blackwell poured boiling water on the men, causing severe burns that required surgery to treat. Now, Blackwell, who didn't live in the apartment, told Tolbert, "Get out of my house with all that gay shit." Further, he said to police when they were investigating, "They were stuck together like two hot dogs, so I poured a little hot water on them and helped them out. They were stuck like two hot dogs. They'll be all right. It was just a little hot water." But they were not all right, actually. They faced severe second and third degree burns. One of them had to spend 10 days in the hospital and 1 month in the hospital. And Tolbert relays the pain he endured in this heart-wrenching clip. Take a look.
It's the pain. You can't sleep at night. The first week I came home, it's like, I think I got about 10 hours of sleep that whole week. The pain doesn't let you sleep. It's like it's excruciating 24 hours a day. And it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't dial down or anything. It's just there.
Now, Blackwell, the person who really caused all of this pain for Tolbert, is currently in jail, and he's charged with 2 counts of aggravated battery. Now, despite the clear bigotry entrenched in his actions, he will not be charged with a hate crime, and that's because Georgia doesn't include sexual orientation in its hate crime, along with 19 other states in the U.S. In fact, Georgia doesn't even have hate crime legislation, along with Arkansas, Indiana, South Carolina, and Wyoming.
So I've got a couple of comments here. I have a unique position. I've never been a big fan of hate crime laws to begin with, and the reason for that is I don't like it when we start to get into the state of mind of the person. I know to some degree we have to. Did he intend to kill him? Did he not intend to kill him in a murder case, for example? So that's very important, and of course that matters in what kind of crime they're charged with. What I don't like is a crime of passion gets actually a lesser charge than a premeditated crime. So you catch your wife having an affair and you shoot and kill him. Oh, that's a crime of passion. You get less time for that. No, you shouldn't get less time for that. You murdered him. So so in terms of these hate crimes, this is a horrific crime. He should have the book thrown at him. I don't really, I care less about his frame of mind than I do about his actions. Now, having said that, if you're going to have hate crime legislation, and they do, regarding race and many other factors, should, how they identify themselves, whether they're gay or not, be part of that? Absolutely. I mean, if you got people who hate gay people enough to throw boiling water on them, and you tell me, no, that hate is not the same as racial hatred, I don't believe you. It's empirically not true. I mean, look at how many hate crimes there are against gay people already in this country. Based on sexual orientation, in 2014, we had over 1,000 incidents. That's more than 3 a day. What happened? I thought we had this problem solved, according to the right wing. We don't have it solved. So I don't want to distract from the main problem here, which is when states like Georgia put sexual orientation in a different grouping. It does not belong in a different grouping. If you're going to have hate crimes legislation, sexual orientation should definitely be part of that consideration.
No, I completely agree with you. And Georgia did have some hate crime legislation in 2000, and because it was too vague, they actually threw it away in 2004. But I do disagree with you about the hate crime component of it, right? Because the reason that hate crime legislation is really important is because a lot of the times hate crimes or crimes that are against people because of their race or sexual orientation or something that would fall within that legislation are too small for police to investigate and prosecute. And when they add the hate crime charge, they're more likely to go investigate it, because then it's more of a terrorist act, because it's a terrorist act against a group of people really trying to fear an entire community, right? And so that's why I think hate crime legislation is so important.
So that's a compelling point, and I'd have to see it case by case to see, what it winds up being a misdemeanor without it and what winds up becoming a felony. But then people could make the argument, well, there's a reason why it should be a misdemeanor, right? Was there a physical altercation? Was there not a physical altercation? Because for example, if there's no physical altercation and some guy yells at me that I'm brown or I'm fat or I'm a Muslim or I'm whatever, you name it, right? Whether they're correct or incorrect, right? He's got every right to do that. It's America, and it's freedom of speech. But he doesn't have any right to intrude upon my body, right?
Yeah.
His rights end at the bridge of my nose, as they say in law school, right? And so that's why I think it's a tricky issue.
Yeah.
But if you have hate crime legislation, then it's not at all tricky to include sexual orientation.
Yeah, no, I think we both definitely agree on that component, that sexual orientation, of course, should be included in any sort of hate crime legislation. I think, like, accidentally spilling boiling hot water on somebody and spilling boiling hot water on people because of their sexual orientation, I think there is a huge difference there, and I think that should be reflected in the way that they are charged and the way that they are punished. Further, I think, like, when we really get into a lot of the majority of hate crimes in the country, let's talk about graffiti, right? So writing your tag or whatever people write is one thing, and that could be, face some sort of fine or something like that. But going on somebody's house and putting like a swastika or writing like the N-word or something like that, huge difference, right?
Yeah.
And so those should be charged differently, and one's a hate crime and one is just screwing up somebody else's property.
So that, again, a great point. And let me just clarify on the boiling water issue. I think intent does matter. If he accidentally spilled it, well, that's a totally different crime, negligence, etc. In this case, he admits that he intended to throw it on them.
Right.
If he you can have it's perfectly legitimate to have either side of this debate. Some people say he threw it on them because he just didn't like them, should get just the same penalty as he threw it on them because they're gay. And others will take your position. No, it's worse if he did it because they're gay or either they're black or whatever it might be, right? And I think both positions are totally defensible. But what's not defensible is the actions.
Right.
And what I want people to understand is the next time a right-winger tells you, oh, we're past that. Why do you even talk about who comes out and who doesn't come out? Everybody already knows that's totally fine. No, everybody doesn't know that. There's still people in this country who are throwing boiling hot water. By the way, attempted murder is another possible charge here, which is much harsher than hate crime and should be considered. You throw boiling water on someone, you could kill them, right? They're lucky it was on I think on their legs. I mean, they're not at all lucky.
No, some of it is on his neck. And
I mean, if it had burned through. So, but if there are still people in this country that hate gay people that much, so ignoring it doesn't make it go away.